Good morning. Hello, my name is Rachel Michelin. I'm the Executive Director, CEO for California Women Lead, and so thrilled that you're here with us this morning. This is the first appointments training we have had as a breakfast. So I'm kind of thrilled that you are all here this morning. So we may be changing some things up in how we do things and offering more breakfast trainings around the state. For those of you who are not familiar, how many for you this is your first California Women Lead event? Oh, great. Well, let me give you real quick who we are and what we do. California Women Lead is a statewide women's leadership association. We are nonpartisan. Our mission is to increase the number of women in elected and appointed office throughout the state of California at all levels of government. So we do these types of trainings from the Oregon border all the way down to San Diego. In fact, some of you were with us last night. We were in Irvine doing a training. And really what our mission is we do not have a political agenda other than seeing more women succeed in the political arena. So we do appointments trainings, and then we also empower women to consider running for office through different types of campaign trainings throughout the state. So we're very passionate. We have a state board of directors of 18, half Republican, half Democrat. They're from all over the state of California, all levels of government. So we really try to make sure it's not just about Sacramento or Washington, D.C. It really is about, there are so many women who serve on city councils and school boards, and they find that that's really their mission in life. Work very hard. Our board is, I will brag, I think I have the most dynamic state board of directors of any nonprofit in California because they are phenomenal women. When we come together, it's about one mission, and that's getting more women engaged. So I'm thrilled you could be with us today. Hopefully today, how many of you are appointed right now? Couple? How many of you have applied for an appointment? Couple. How many of you have gone to the governor's website and actually looked at the application? Well, I hope that after today, after this training, you're going to be empowered to go take that step and apply for appointed office, because I will tell you, we do these trainings, I don't know how many we've done just this year, just this in the last 3 months, and women, it is just such an empowering experience to serve as an appointee of the governor of California. And it really is, for me, I think for women in particular, we spend so much of our time helping other folks, helping our families, our kids, our community. And to me, really serving as an appointee, I am a current appointee of the governor. It turns out it's about me. It's kind of my me time. It's something that I get to do for myself, and I absolutely, I've loved it. This is my 6th year as an appointee, and I really do enjoy what I do. So with that, I'd like to introduce Lucy Dunn, who is here, and she is an appointee of the governor. She's on the, and so we asked her to come and speak a little bit about her experience in hopes of helping to continue the inspiration for women to serve in appointed office.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much. I have to thank Rachel. This is awesome that she has made this available for Orange County and for great women leaders that are already leaders in their own right. We just need to put them on another platform, right? I also want to congratulate Assemblymember Fiona Ma for winning her race. Congratulations for State Board of Equalization. And then Mona Pasquale, thank you so much for everything you do. And Chris Murray, our Anaheim City Mayor Pro Tem, is here. And then Sharon Quirk Silva, Assemblywoman, is here, who also just won her right to stay in this game until November, and we'll see her still in leadership all this year. Congratulations, ladies. Thank you. Thank you. I kind of wanted to share a little bit about my story of my appointment process. I have worked my entire career in the private sector. I started in the practice of law for about 10 years, 15 years. I then went into real estate development, both as a general counsel, and then moved into the real estate development side, the business side, and had done a lot of work with volunteer groups like the Building Industry Association on housing, conservancies, doing environmental work, et cetera, for a major project that I was working on. Learned so much about the environmental world. And in my course of my private sector, I'd worked with government agencies from local school boards all the way up to the White House. I mean, everything in between in the private sector. And then one day my project got done, my big project that I'd spent so many years on. And I was sort of like in a funk. And it was I was intrigued by an opportunity to go work in Sacramento, but I'd never worked in government before. And my son, my 21-year-old son, honest to God, he came to me one day and he said, "Mother, God gave you gifts, and you have a duty to use them. You have a duty to use them for good." And I'm going, who taught you the parable of the talents, right? All that catechism actually worked. And I just kind of cracked up because it was he who kind of inspired me to apply. And then I ultimately was appointed as the state's Director of Housing and Community Development, in charge of a department of about 500 state employees. I had never been in state government before. I actually moved to Sacramento, and I spent a couple of years up there loving it, just loving it. You learn so much stuff. And then having always been on this side of the table working with government agencies, it became such an interesting experience to learn the other side of the table. That, I think, is really, really important. It causes you to think in a balanced way. It causes you to respect state employees that, you know, everyone talks about waste, fraud, and abuse. You have very dedicated, talented state employees in Sacramento that are working very hard every day of the week, and you learn about them as people and about the great work they do. Following that, I was appointed then I came back down to Orange County for a number of reasons to head up the Business Council, but never lost the contacts, the relationships, the understanding of government. And I firmly believe, ladies, I firmly believe that there should be a rule that says we be mandated to spend 2 years in public service. We should be mandated to do that, to understand how our government works. And because you are women, you have a different voice. You have a different world, and it's important to have your voice there. I came on to be appointed to the Transportation Commission and then appointed by Governor Brown to serve a second term. And that was really interesting because I was the only woman on an 11-member board on transportation. I wasn't an expert in transportation. I didn't know, but I learned, and I had a gift that I could bring, which was to translate transportation lingo into language that people could understand. That I knew was my gift. And so public education, my housing background, when you have Senator Darrell Steinberg having legislation that we're all implementing now to plan housing and transportation together, my gift on the Transportation Commission has been able to torture Caltrans to think about housing planning in transportation planning. It's a great gift, and it advances the governor's agenda. It advances statewide objectives that our legislators have established for us, and it really have a different voice on there. So I share that with you because I was scared at first to do this, and now I, like Alicia, have been encouraging at OCBC as one of our objectives at the Orange County Business Council is to encourage you. I don't care if it's your local city council parks commission or a governor's appointment or an appointment at the federal level. Women's voices have to be heard. We need a diversity. We need gender equity. There's a lot of women on library boards. We actually need men there, right? But we need women in other places to help balance the economy that we're all living and growing in. There are terrible statistics out there that there are not enough women in the corporate boardroom, as you know. There are also not enough women in public service in leadership positions and appointments. And so having an opportunity to inspire you and encourage you at any level of government to get involved and engaged, particularly if you know how to balance a budget in a tough economy. And you guys, you all know how to do your household checkbooks, and in your companies, you all know how to read financial statements and do good work on the finance side. They really need help. Every government agency needs help in the financial world. So anyway, I wanted to just share that with you as a little opening, and let's see what else, Alicia, did I want you to ask. Be sure to ask the tough questions when they tell you. Don't be afraid. I know you won't be. Look, I see this room, and I know half of you, so I know you're going to ask some good questions. I know you're also very busy in your lives with your families and your own jobs, And volunteer work doesn't pay very much, right? But it's worth it in the end, and the experiences as lifelong learners that we all are will make you better persons individually, in addition to contributing great to our society. So, a couple of minutes here with quick questions, and that's it. Anyway, so I'll turn it now over to, great, Rachel, back to you. Thank you all very much for allowing me to share. Thanks, Rachel.
So much. Thank you. Thank you. Real quickly, I'd like to take a quick moment. I know that Christy is here from Time Warner Cable, and if you look in the back, we are being taped, so just so you know, it will be running on their cable stations here in this area, and they were so gracious. They also supported our training in Fontana, which was last month, and they're also running that, and then as well as it'll be, I think, on the California channel, and you can download it on the website. So if you have friends who missed it this morning, you all get an email when it becomes available, and feel free to share that link with folks who might be interested in watching it. And also, Jennifer is here from Allegan. They were wonderful sponsors of our training last night in Irvine, and she wasn't able to make it, so she's here this morning, and I just want to thank her for her support. And I know Chevron is also a supporter, and Southern California Gas is also a supporter of our event tonight. So thank you so much for your support. They've been a great supporter of ours throughout the state, so thank you. With that, I'd like to introduce Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva. I had the pleasure of actually meeting her years ago when she was on the Fullerton City Council. She came and spoke at a conference we did in San Diego, and at that time she was talking about the lack of women, I think, serving particularly locally on city councils, and I think at the time you were the only woman on the city council. And so it's been such a pleasure to watch her be successful here in Orange County and then now in Sacramento. Many of you know she's up in a tight race in November. And so we're just thrilled that she can join us. I know she's been a big supporter of ours here in Orange County and also up in the state capitol. So with that, Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva.
Good morning. How's everybody? I'm not going to hide back here, but I do have some notes. But it is a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Orange County Business Council and California Lead for hosting this here in our great city of Anaheim, and I represent West Anaheim. But I do represent North Orange County, and it really has been a privilege and an honor. It's been a very fast 18 months with a short amount of time left, and I'm extremely proud of the work that I've done. 6 bills that have been passed by not only the legislature, but also signed by the governor, and I think that really will make a difference in people's lives. But I do want to note that I did meet Rachel when she was actually going to have her baby, and so as I've been in local politics and now state, it has been a decade for me. This will be my 10th, is that her? Okay. How old is she? 10, yeah, so I was going to say it's been a decade since I started, and I really did start on the Parks and Recreation Commission. So Lucy, those are the first stepping stones. And I don't want to diminish that at all, because so often when and if women are encouraged to run, a lot of times it's like, well, you should, run for Congress, but a lot of times it's those small steps, and in my case, many times the small steps of starting not only as a school teacher for 27 years, but then as a commissioner, then to council, and then for this seat. So my point is sometimes we want to kind of jump to the front, and many times that can happen, but it's building that resume along the way, and many times we don't even know we're doing it, but I think it's really being authentic. And I think those are the type of things that the voters really understand. If you say you're a volunteer in the community, they know if you're a volunteer because you've been at your local PTA meetings, you've been at the Rotary clubs, you know who your local librarian is. So I think voters really respond to who is that in my community, and as you're doing things, whether it's for your family or whether it's for your church and again, for your kids, a lot of times those leadership roles do really give you the experience. I remember when I had 4 kids under the age of 8, and I was actually my daughter's brownie troop leader, and we were doing the cookie sale. And any of you moms who've done that, that was enough to take me over the edge, because at that time, all this accounting with babies and kids. But the point is, I didn't know that I was building a resume. It was not, if somebody had asked me then, hey, are you going to be in the California State Assembly, I would have looked at them very, I probably wouldn't have had much to say, because I didn't even know who my local council members were. So that brings me to voting, which is, we have a lot of apathy. We saw that 1 in 5 voters voted this time around. I think Lucy and I and others need to work on a national voting campaign, regardless of party, because it's just very sad to see the voter turnout, and that people really don't understand our system, particularly the top 2 system. But with that, that's another initiative, and it's certainly something women should take on. In the State Assembly this year, there are 20 women out of our 80 members, and that looks to be ticking downward. So we are losing women at the State Assembly. In my case, I do have a very difficult race ahead, but I always like to compliment women that stand up, no matter if it's my opponent or not. I have a very capable challenger, and so in my case, we won't lose a woman whether I'm there or whether my opponent is there. But the point is, we have to get women to run, and it's not easy. It's not easy when you have children at home. There's a lot of people, if there's a man on the State Assembly floor that has 2 or 3 babies, nobody says, oh, well, how is that? You have a woman that's on the State Assembly with young children, and it's how do you do that, and don't you miss them, and how old are they, all of these things. I know several of my Republican women colleagues, one, Melissa Melendez, has 5 kids. And she is so tired of being asked, well, what does this look like, that she says, you know what, I came up to Sacramento to take a break from them. But she's turned it into being a little humorous, because she's so tired of the question, really. Because how often do men get asked, well, how do you do it? They put the babies in the pictures, and nobody questions them. Women do it, and it's like, well, don't you feel guilty? So we really haven't moved past that. But again, I really do encourage you to take that initiative. And number one thing, and I used to say it as a classroom teacher, I used the logo of Nike, which was, I always said, what does this mean to the kids? And at first they'd say check, and I'd say, what is the thing that we see on television? And they say, oh, just do it. So I just say, just do it. There won't be a perfect time. There won't be a time when you're all settled. It will be a challenge. It has been incredibly challenging for me, but it's also been an incredible experience. You learn every single day. And in your 50s, I'm a little bit older than some of the younger women at the State Assembly, but so there's quite a bit of change. It's almost like going off to college when you're 50. And for the first time in my life, I'm living in a little studio apartment by myself, and coming from a family of 10 where I never had a bedroom alone, in a dorm room where I shared, and then getting married very early. This is the first time I've ever had a studio apartment. So I'm trying to explain to my friends down here, and, well, what do you do all week while you're up there? I'm like, I'm alone. No. There's lots to do. But my point is, it really is an incredible experience, and I wish everybody here well. But if you don't hear about an application, call. If you feel like you've applied for something, get people to rally around you, because believe it or not, those calling to the governor's office, understanding those relationships, are really how those appointments sometimes are made. I mean, there is a formal process, but it's certainly those relationships behind the scene that can help you. And I'm here to say, if you need a recommendation, it's amazing how many people don't take advantage of that. Over the years, as a teacher, I probably have had, I'm going to say, more than 200 type of volunteers in my classrooms. And I always said, if you wanted me to write them a recommendation letter, I'd be happy to do that. I probably had 5 students out of all of those students who ever come back. So a lot of times people are offering, and then people don't take advantage. So I think that's another thing, is look around. There's 30 women here. Every woman here has some type of reason to be here. Ask who they are, get their business. You know all of this, but a lot of times we don't do that. So I'd like to just end with, I'm really encouraged that we have a room full of women here that are interested, but we're hoping that as we see these appointments, we continue to push for women to be appointed, because the stats are, I'll just end with one quote here from Sheryl Sandberg. I had the opportunity to meet her last year, the COO of Facebook. She just wrote the book Lean In, and she says, women are not making it to the top of any profession anywhere in the world. And I don't have my glasses, the numbers tell the story quite clearly. 190 heads of state, 9 are women. Of all the people in the parliament in the world, 13% are women, and so on and so on. So we have work to do, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. You know, some of you might have received it, but it's also on our website. We did kind of a down and dirty analysis the day after the election on how women fared in the June primary. And looking at the numbers, best case scenario, unfortunately, in the state Senate is we remain at 20, and that's if every single woman in the target in the general election wins, or we could possibly lose up to 6 seats. So that would put us, down to 19 women. No, less than that. I can't, it's too early still. 14 women. I mean, I don't know that it's been that low for decades. And then in the state Senate, there's an opportunity to pick up 1 seat, which would be phenomenal, or we could lose up to 3 seats in the state Senate. So really, I was talking with a woman who is one of the top political consultants on the phone yesterday. She started in 1992 doing the Year of the Women, remember that? When we had record number of women elected, not only in California, but in Washington, D.C. And unfortunately in California, since that time, we had a record number elected. The number has gone down or stayed stagnant. So we still have a lot of work to do. Therese Stevens is here today, and I wanted to recognize her because she was instrumental 2 years ago when California Women Lead worked with the National Women's Political Caucus, an organization called HOPE, and the California Commission on the Status of Women on the California Women's State Appointments Project. And what that was is we went out statewide and recruited women to apply for an appointment with the new administration, not knowing who that administration was yet. I found it fascinating. We were the only, I think, project that both candidates agreed on. So if you remember that campaign, it got a little dicey, but we had a commitment from both Meg Whitman, if she had been elected, and then from Jerry Brown, that when they were elected, they would push to make sure 50% of their appointees were women. And so it was an incredible campaign. We ended up giving the governor 1,300 resumes of women interested in serving. Ironically, remember we had the whole binders full of women, whole thing. We gave a flash drive full of women to the governor's office, and it actually was funny. I thought I had a bunch of time to, this is kind of says his commitment. I thought, oh, he got elected in November. We'll have time. You know, he's not going to contact us until January. No, it was almost a week after the election. Where's the list? Can you get me the list? And I'm like, oh, okay. So we put it on the flash drive, and that started an incredible relationship with the governor's office and empowering women. We are very close. We're, I think, 49.9%. We still have time, but I tell you that we cannot hold the governor accountable if I don't hold women in California accountable, because we need more women to apply. So with that, I'd like to introduce, you know, as I talked about the State Board of Directors, I'm a big believer that things fall from the top. And so the reason why California Women Lead is so successful is because of the leadership that we have on the state board. And I am just so honored to have Fiona Ma as the president of California Women Lead. She and I have spent the last year traveling all over California. If there is ever a woman who is about empowering women, regardless of their background in leadership, it is her. She was just elected, got the nomination for Board of Equalization, District 2, which is up in Northern California. But this is just the start of some really great things, and I'm just so thrilled that she's here with us today. Fiona.
Thank you so much. It's great to see so many people in the morning, and as Rachel said, normally we do these trainings in the evening, 6 to 8. and it's nice to kind of see people in the morning. I think some of us are morning people, like myself, and so it's great to start the day. Great to see Sharon Quirk Silva. I am so happy that she is in the state legislature. There's no harder working woman than Sharon, and just hearing your background, where you came from, how you kind of fell into the legislature is kind of how my story is as well. I never planned to run for office. 20 years ago, I had just left one of the big 6 accounting firms, was starting my own practice, went around networking, passing out my cards, and someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Miss Ma, if you want to get clients, you should be president of this small business association. Don't worry, it won't be a lot of work, we'll help you." And so being gullible, I said, okay. All of a sudden, I ended up going down to City Hall to lobby the mayor and the board of supervisors, went to Sacramento to testify in legislation, got involved in the 1995 White House Conference on Small Business, and started to kind of look around at these elected officials. And how many of you look at your elected officials, not here in this room, but other ones, and say, I can do a better job, right? So I kind of was going, wow, I was sitting with this group of small business leaders, and like Lucy, kind of had this voice from above say, we need to run our own people. If you want to have a voice, we need to be at the table. And I was like, whoa, that's great. And so the first step was really getting appointed. At that time, this organization was trying to get local appointments, and they said, Miss Ma, you're Chinese, and the Chinese like to own homes, and they kind of need help at the Assessment Appeals Board, because a lot of them, don't necessarily speak English, can't afford lawyers and accountants, so, we think you should apply for the Assessment Appeals Board. And I did. And what the board does is when there is a downturn in the economy, people apply to reassess their property so that they pay less property taxes. And sure enough, I got appointed, and I saw a lot of small business owners, just mom and pops, people who had spent, their life saving just to buy that home. And it became very empowering, being able to help people, right, directly, making those, rulings, whether their property taxes, should be decreased, made their lives a little bit easier. So I kind of started getting the bug. I started working on more campaigns, using my accounting skills to help candidates run for office. And I kind of wanted to run for office. I kept saying, I think I could do good. I want to help people. I don't think I'm meant to be a tax accountant sitting in an office 16 hours a day behind a computer, hitting deadlines every 15th of the month. And so I went home to my mom and dad, and I said, Mom and Dad, you know what? I think I want to give up accounting, and I want to run for office. My parents are both born in China. I am the oldest child. As you can imagine, my parents were not happy with me. They were like, please don't shame us. Accounting is an honorable profession, and we would like you to kind of stay and be an accountant. So I said, okay, I kind of compromised with them, and I got a job. Senator John Burton at the time was hiring, and he wanted to hire me full-time, and I told him, sorry, Senator, I can't, but I can work for you part-time. So he hired me, and for 2.5 days, I worked as his district representative in his office, handling mostly state financial issues, franchise tax board, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, DMV, all the exciting state agencies, right? But because I was only part-time and last on the totem pole, I kind of got all of those very exciting issues. But I learned, working with the community, how state agencies worked, and I really enjoyed working at the state level. Then, I kept having this, urge to run for office, and even though I wanted to run for the state legislature, I figured I better run for local office first, right? That's what they always say, take the steps. I'm always kind of like Sharon, a resume builder, because that's how we are, because when people ask, they're gonna say, well, why you? Why are you qualified? when there's an opening, the men always go, pick me, I can do it. Yet for the women, it's always like, let me see your resume, let me see what you've done, do you have any references? We're not, we're not sure. So I figured I'm gonna run for the local board of supervisors. So I did, 8 people in the race, 2 women, 6 men, 4 Asians, 4 non-Asians, and the district I ran in was half Chinese and half Irish. And I always say to, my folks that I think my parents knew I was gonna run in the Sunset District by giving me a name like Fiona. Ma, how could I lose? So I managed to get elected to the Board of Supervisors, and honestly, I wasn't ready for the fighting. At the local level, it's kind of man-to-man combat. You're on your own. I always say if you like to play sports, if you're an individual sports person like running and swimming, then local office is probably good for you. If you like team sports like basketball, volleyball, then you probably want to go to the legislature because you are never alone. We have a captain who is the speaker. You're a Democrat versus the Republicans. You're the assembly versus the Senate. You're the legislature versus the governor. You're the state versus the feds. So it's always a very nice kind of environment where you have a role on the team, you step up and you help your other members when they're in trouble or can't, physically be there. And I really enjoyed being in the state legislature. So I would just advise any of you who are thinking of running for higher office, definitely start with a local commission, either state or local. And then once you kind of get that first taste of what it's like to directly help people, Alicia is going to talk a little bit about helping accountants later on the accountancy board. It does become empowering, and you start asking yourself, I kind of want to do more, right, after you learn that job. And then people in the community start asking you, hey, when are you going to run? We want to support you. And so this is the first step in kind of moving through the political public process. And there's no better person that we have in state government but Mona Pascal. Mona Pascal was our lieutenant governor, and because she broke those barriers, I actually want to be lieutenant governor someday. Like, I never thought I could do it, but 4 years, maybe I could be lieutenant governor. Mona did it. And that's what it takes about breaking barriers and having role models and leaders. But Mona does more for women than anybody else in state government. The reason there's almost 50% of women in the governor's boards and commissions is because of Mona and her commitment to making sure that we have more women appointed and we have more women in the pipeline. There's going to be a whole bunch of openings in June. And so she is frantically kind of looking for all types of people, a diverse group of people from all over the California to apply. Because if you don't apply, she can't pick you. And she's going to come up and explain to you that it's not that mysterious a process. You have friends like Mona, California Women Lead. You can call your Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk, not that she doesn't have enough work, but these are ways that you can kind of help yourself as you are thinking about what you can do to give back. And Mona Pascal, I just want to say, we love you. We thank you. California Women Lead started 40 years ago when this governor was governor. And they started because the governor was committed to appointing more women. And 40 years later, the governor is still committed to appointing more women. But now he really does have a point person who is out there, she's recruiting, she's encouraging, and she's actually making this happen. So I'm very honored to have Mona Pascal here.
Thank you, Fiona. Girl, was that an announcement? Is Rachel gonna tweet that? Hello. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. It is, it's an honor. I really appreciate the assembly member for being here. You are very busy, but you being here makes a difference in the community. To wonderful Fiona, who's on her way to another office, Lucy Dunn, who has got a million things going on, to her vice mayor. Thank you for sponsoring and making sure that we're in this beautiful room. And the sponsors and Rachel, who is always up and down the state, as well as Ashley, her sidekick, who's always going up and down the state and encouraging women to run, women to apply, women to serve. You know, I want to just talk a little bit about that lieutenant governor thing, just for a second. It's funny that you should say that, because when I was in the office for 6 months and a day, really funny, there was a young girl who came to the office, and she was in 5th grade. Fifth graders come to the Capitol and they do the tour. This young girl and her mother were there because they were new to this country, and her mother didn't want her to go on the bus. She didn't know the parents, she didn't know everybody, so she says, "I'm going to take you." So I was in a meeting, I walk out of the office, and I see mother and daughter talking to the team. Something just made me walk up to her, and I asked her a little bit about, where are you from and what are you doing? And she asked, "May I see your office?" So I said, "Well, come on back." So she goes, we go back to the corner office, and she sees the wood-paneled walls. She turns around, looks at me, and says, "I didn't know girls could have an office like this." Exactly. Oh, okay, in Hawaii, we get chicken skin. I looked at her, and for a moment, I smiled, and then my heart broke. Because just a few years ago, there are still young women, young girls today who don't know what they can become unless they see it. So you have to apply. You have to think about serving. If not on the state level, but the county. If not you, then who? Think about someone else, because there are people, young girls, but young boys who are depending on us to show them that anything is possible. And just because you're here this morning at 7:30, I know you want to apply. I know you want to serve. I know you want to figure out some way that you can give back. I often ask the deputies, there are 3 of them, whose voice is missing when we talk about different boards. I'll say, don't tell me anything else. I don't want to talk about the people yet. Well, let's channel Governor Brown. Whose voice is missing from this board? And I'll tell you that I bet you your voices are missing from many boards. We need to have people from all up and down this state. Because if you have a statewide board and there's a community, a neighborhood, a part of the state that's missing, then we're not doing our job. All voices are not heard, so I encourage you to please do it. Is the process tough? Some may call it tough. I say you need to have a little patience. It's very easy. You do have to apply online. If you don't want to apply online, you have to, right now, I'd ask that you pick up one of my cards, call me directly, I'll give you my number, my direct line. Bryce hates when or Rebecca, who's on maternity leave, hates when I do this, but it's 916-445-1915. Call me. 916-445-1915. Call me. Ask Bryce. Sometimes I pick up the phone. Sometimes Bryce picks up the phone. Pick up the phone and say, I need 5 to 10 minutes with Mona. I just want to talk about my interests. What I will ask you to do, though, is before we talk, send me your resume. Send me a little background. Email me and say something like, I have this much time. I can't travel a lot. I love education. I want to do something on the accountancy board. Give me a little bit of idea of what you want so that I can be prepared to help you. All right? Once you apply, and after we talk, you will talk to one of the deputies, one of the 3 deputies. They're going to ask you questions about why you want to serve. They'll be thinking about things like potential conflict so that we don't get you all the way down and at the end go, oh my goodness, there's a conflict after all of this, right? So we will ask a lot of questions. You will then talk to, probably after that, a senior advisor that's related to the issue that you're interested in. And you might say, because many people do, all of you ask the same questions. Guess what? We all hear different things. So just answer. Have a good conversation with us. If you're not applying, but you're helping someone to apply, help them in the interview process. Help a sister out. Do a little bit of role play. What are some of the questions they might ask you? Are you prepared? Do you know the governor's position on education, higher education? What are your thoughts on whatever this board is looking at? What you do a little bit of homework. Actually do a lot of homework. Be prepared. I know we do this in our daily lives, but I'll tell you, be prepared. You don't have to know all the answers. Someone said to me once, I don't know if I can do this. I might have to go take some additional classes. I don't know all the answers. Who does? You got to have the passion. Our wish is that you have the passion to want to learn, to ask questions, to be prepared. He will ask many times, I'd like to see attendance. How are my folks doing? I do not want to be the one that says, hasn't attended in a meeting in a year. Nobody knows why. So participate, be prepared. He will also ask sometimes, get her on the phone. You might be on the teacher credentialing committee. There may be an issue in front of the commission. And he has many times just dropped by and there are meetings or gatherings. And he may say, how do you feel about this issue? He doesn't want to know, he doesn't want to hear, what you think, what he doesn't want to hear, yes, right? Whatever you want, Governor. What he wants to hear is, what are your thoughts on this issue? Do you have your own thoughts? Have you done your own homework? Okay? So just so think about that. It is a little bit intimidating. Every now and then, we try to give people a heads up that he's calling, and sometimes we're not able to do that. And it happened to one woman, it was hilarious. Well, it wasn't hilarious for her. It was kind of, I looked at my colleague Sonia when he said, well, get her on the phone. And we looked at each other, and then we looked at him, and we said, now? And he said, well, yeah. We thought, okay. And he talked to her for a good 10 minutes. What are the issues? How's the budget? Did the team know? Did the staff? Do they have any idea what their mission is? How can we serve better? Right? He might say, call him in 6 months, and what's the assessment? You may say, I don't know if this board's really necessary anymore, Governor. I did my own Nancy Drew Hardy Boys work, and I there are several other boards that do very similar things. And he may say, well, where do you think it should be? Should we eliminate this one? And he will want to know your opinion. People say, how long? Could be anywhere from 2 weeks, because we may have recruited you, or we may have, we look for you, trust me. We need people with certain backgrounds a lot of times. We will look for you to 2 years. And there are times when people will say, I applied, I never heard from anybody. What I will ask is, if you have applied and you haven't heard from us, call. Because there are thousands of applications, and sometimes we may miss you. So guess what? Call. I applied, I met you at, this appointments workshop. I know that there wasn't a spot for me last year, but I think there's a vacancy coming up, and I'd like to serve now. We'll put you on the phone with one of the deputies. But it's two-way street. You gotta call us. I get emails a lot that say, I applied for this board. I don't want anything else but this board. I will very respectfully say, please be open. Because maybe you want this board, the medical board, and maybe there isn't a spot for you, but we may say, what about community colleges right now? You will then, because I've heard this before, well, it's not really what I'm interested in. We will come back and say, we think that your voice is missing, and here's why. We had a wonderful woman who had applied to be on one of our commissions, and after we were talking about her, the deputies and I, we talk every day, share your names back and forth, and I said to Sonia Hustis, this person should be on the community college board, She's a retired colonel. She has been working in her community as a volunteer to get recently returned vets through the higher education system. They are struggling. They're having a hard time finding jobs, and they can't get through. There's some reason why there's this difficulty getting through to go to college, that process. So we called her, and we said, well, have you thought about this? And she said, well, I do this all the time, but that's not what I had applied for. I said, will you consider it? And we appointed her. The governor appointed her a few months ago, and when she went to her first meeting, I spoke with the chancellor, and he said, where did you find her? And I said, at an appointments workshop. I'd never met, she wasn't in the pool. She happened to be interested in something else. And so I ask you to be open, because sometimes we will see something in you that you might not see in yourself. Very, very important that you just talk to us. Sometimes people say, what does it mean when my appointment requires Senate confirmation? It means that when you go through our process, right, we do all of our Nancy Drew Hardy Boys background and reference checks. The Senate does their own, separate from us. We will ask you, once you're oathed, you have 365 days to be approved by the Senate. They will observe you in your position. Show up, participate, ask questions. But think about all of those questions and the things that you're doing. Remember, they are watching you. You might say, well, I don't know who they are. You never do. Sometimes there's staff that will go into them and watch you in meetings. Talk to us. Nettie Sablehouse on the governor's team handles all of Senate rules applicants and appointees. And she will work with you and the ledge team to introduce you to people. She will also help you do another deep dive. Who might support you? Who might oppose you? And sometimes, ladies, it's not about you personally. Sometimes it's about the position. One of our appointees who required Senate confirmation had the longest Senate rules hearing in history, 4.5 hours. Wasn't about him, it was about the department. A lot of things happen in different places. So we will work with you to be prepared. We will say, hey, you might want to get support here, but we never leave your side. We will work with you to help you through the process. You will be asked to fill out your own questionnaire in the Senate. Fill it out. Be timely. I know that everyone's busy, but what you are doing is you have to be responsive to them, because if you don't go through this process, your appointment will end in 365 days or less. Okay? Very important to pay attention to that. I've had a couple of times where we've had people be on a board, and they've called maybe 6 months, 8 months in and said, I thank you very much, but am I going to be blackballed if I tell you that I don't want to be on this committee or board anymore? I want to be on something else. I'm like, no, talk to us. Sometimes they're good fits, sometimes they're not. Chemistry is everything, right? And sometimes it might not click. You might not feel really comfortable with the issue. And you may say, can you talk to me about another one? Absolutely, absolutely. Communicate with us. You may be on a board and you may think, I don't know anything about this process. Don't internalize it, talk to us. Talk to Fiona, talk to Rachel, talk to myself, talk to the deputies. We're all here for you. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hand at any time and interrupt me. No questions? Anybody gonna apply? Maybe? Yes, thank you. Gov.ca.gov, so you go online. What I'd like you to do, though, too, when you take my card, every month we will update the vacancy list. And so, and it changes. We're going to be announcing about 50 appointments in the next week that we've just done. So what was on that, May 2nd list it's already out of date. So while you're looking, say, could I get a refresh? Could I email me the list and then look at it again? On our website, you can also see fact sheets. You can pull up a fact sheet on a particular board or commission. If you need more information, call me and we will email it to you. What I would like to suggest is I would also like to put you on the phone with one of the deputies. What I think is really important is that you know the basics, how many times they meet, you know, what's the mission, but you're going to want to know things like, gee, I wonder why this board is in the LA Times every day, every month, front page, top of the fold, right? And do I really want to be on this board? Okay, we will tell you, here are some of the things that face this particular commission. You may belong to an association, and they may encourage you to run for a licensee spot on one of the consumer boards. One of the things I want to remind everybody, when you are on a consumer board, your mission is to protect the consumer. So the hat that I may wear as an accountant, on the accountancy board, is not about my association. It is about how am I making sure that the public is protected, okay? Very important. If you can't switch hats, not a good board. Not a good board for you. You've got to be very, very mindful of who you represent. If you are on any of these boards, people will say, where do you meet? Do you always meet in Sacramento? Most of the boards, the staff, they're located in Sacramento. We can't, as the administration, tell everyone, tell the board, tell the staff, you should really rotate and move up and down the staff. You, as a board member, have that power to suggest to the staff and say, we are listening to people from up and down this state. Why not rotate and go to where they are? Especially if you're on a consumer board. Many of these people cannot work until you have decided, if there's a disciplinary action, that you have not closed the case and decided whether or not they could keep their license. What does that mean? That means do your homework and don't let it be postponed for 2 or 3 months because you can't get a quorum. It means show up and do the homework. Sometimes for some of these boards you have 150 cases every 2 weeks. You've got to read them. Somebody's life and their ability to provide for their family depends on it, okay? You may say, why should they have to drive from Temecula all the way to California? Give up a day, to drive, give up another day to attend the meeting, and possibly another to drive back or fly back. Why don't we think about how we can best serve? That is your power as a board member. Any questions? Okay. Some people will ask, and yes. Thank you. I had that on my notes that I've walked away from. Everyone, if you're an appointee, everyone has to fill out a Form 700, financial disclosures. Now, I have to do that. If you don't do it, it's due on April 1st, I believe. No joke. Every year, there is a fine, a daily fine, if you do not fill it out. Many times, this is to see if there are conflicts. Very important to do this. We try to ask all the departments and the boards and commissions to remind people. It can be in the paper. It can be pretty ugly if you don't. And be honest. Look at it, review it, make sure that it's right. If you've made a mistake, put in an amendment, but do it. Okay? Yes?
How do you determine conflicts? I mean, what are big red flags for you?
For us, it's on a lot of the boards, it could be, well, what do you do? Where does on the water boards, it could be, who do you work with? Is there a conflict locally for work, or potentially for the medical board? You cannot be a doctor in the licensee slot. You cannot live with the doctor. You cannot work with the doctor. So we want to make sure all of those things happen. And it could be too, and we keep in contact with you, because on a few of the boards, there may not have been a conflict the day we appointed you, but a year in, because you've changed jobs or because you've entered in this new project, there's a conflict. And so we stay in touch with people to find out, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing? But we'll work with you. We'll work with our legal team to always make sure that we protect you and if we see any red flags. All right, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
You expand on the conflicts for an appointee, so I'm appointing for the Board of Accountancy.
Right, but there are limits, right? So you've got to read it and make sure that you follow the rules for every board, but especially if you are a licensee and it's in that same area. If you have trouble with that, let us know, because what we do is we provide all of the departments will provide in each board an orientation, and they will dig deep into where all those potential conflicts are. Sometimes people will say, you know, I work for a company, and then our travel is paid for a lot of times. You get used to being able to do that. You have to report a lot of this now, okay? So you need to be mindful of it's not just with the board, but it's in what you do in your work. Have a conversation with us or have a conversation with the lawyers, and we'll put you in contact with our folks. Anybody else? Okay. I want to finish with just a couple of stories. There was a young group of women leaders who came in, and they brought in some fellows. And after we talked a bit about what we all do in the administration. And the governor and Nancy McFadden, who's our chief of staff, executive secretary, have been so inspirational and always pushing us to say, find those who are not expecting the call. Find those who are doing great things in their community and ask them if they'd like to serve. They ask us to do this all the time. So when I served on this panel with Nancy and a few others in the administration, I also had to pinch myself, because I thought, man, you know, what a group of dynamic women from all different parts of the state, different stories. And I thought about that to myself, and then afterwards, a young woman came up to me, and she said, I never knew that women were in such powerful positions in this state. I said, sister, we are all over the place, and we are waiting for you. So I say that because, you know, it's not just the little girl, the 5th grader, but it's also, you know, our neighbors. It's someone who's coming up through school. It's someone who is, you know, maybe my age, 52, who may not have ever had a moment to think about how she can give back. And give them that opportunity. Help them to see that if you want to do it, it's possible. You may not get exactly what you want on the exact day, but we will work with you to get to yes always. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had the opportunity, a woman who's a member of California Women Lead sent me a wonderful email. She was retired, she just retired, and she had gone to a training, she applied, and she was appointed to the Dental Hygienist Committee, and she sent me this email, exactly what Mona just said. She's like, I never knew I could do this, so thank you so much. She absolutely loves it. You know, when Mona was talking about being open, I get a lot of those calls. I only want to be appointed to this board. And I always say, well, keep waiting, because it's very hard if you're very specific. I was appointed to the Private Security Disciplinary Review Committee. Those of you who were there last night cannot answer. How many of you know what that is? Private Security Disciplinary Review Committee. I hear appeals from private security guards who have had their licenses revoked or denied by the state of California. So ask me where I had any of that experience in my resume. I didn't. But one of the great things I think about the deputies, and particularly the ones that work with Mona in the governor's office, is that sometimes they see things in your resume and they know that your personality will be a compliment to the board, and they'll put something out there that you may not have ever thought of. So when I was appointed, I thought, really? And I was actually pregnant with my second daughter. And I was at the orientation with a list, I still have it, how do I get out of this? And I thought, do I use the baby card? Do I use, I'm too busy? But you know, you're too embarrassed to, I wasn't gonna call the governor's office and say, I don't really wanna do this. So I thought, I'll give it a year. Well, that was 6 years ago. And I will tell you, I absolutely love serving, partly because I find it fascinating. You know, my favorite show, my husband laughs, it's Law and Order, so it's kind of like my own little Law and Order. But also because the people I serve with, what the unique thing I think about what the governor's staff does is they really do balance the personalities. And so I really encourage you to think outside the box. Don't go in with a certain, I only want to do this, because you never know what opportunities will present itself if you do have that open attitude about serving. So with that, I'd like to introduce the Mayor Pro Tem. Chris Murray's here. You know, we talk so much about the state process, but there are also a lot of appointments at the local level. You know, I actually live in El Dorado County, was just appointed to the Charter Review Commission, which I found out later is probably one of the biggest boards to be appointed to. And so I did that because I actually started off first getting appointed locally and then went to the state. And I think there's two very unique attributes of serving in both positions. And so with that, the Vice Mayor.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. And thank you for taking time to join us in Anaheim at such an early hour. For me, I still need another gallon of coffee. But, you know, I think you heard a lot of common themes today. The women who are serving in leadership are probably the busiest women you're ever going to meet. They're moms. They are working full-time in addition to the public service. That is my story. I am a mom. I am a wife. I work full-time in addition to my role as a city councilwoman in Anaheim. I'm in my first term. It was a real leap of faith when I chose to run. And quite frankly, I didn't think I'd be successful. I was just going to go for it and give it my best shot. And I was rewarded by the voters because my message resonated, which was about public service. And I had such strong support from a community and a grassroots level. And so it has been an honor and a privilege to serve. And I'm also up for re-election like Sharon is in November. So we've got a big election ahead of us. So important, first and foremost, that we keep our compact as a member of a democracy, that we vote. And we did have incredible apathy. We had the lowest voter turnout, I think, in Anaheim's history. So please, this November, help your neighbors, help your friends, run your family to the polls. Whatever it takes, absentee, I mean, you can vote by absentee, you can put it in the mail. It's just so easy these days to vote. I really hope people will do that. Also, with regard to service, I got my start as an appointee as well. It is such a great place to meet so many people. And I will tell you right out of the gate, I love that Mona was saying, keep an open mind, because there's no question you're going to go in directions once you get into an appointed position you never anticipated. It is going to open so many doors. You are going to make so many amazing relationships with people you never knew you'd meet, and it makes your life so much richer for it. There are tremendous opportunities right here at the very local level in any one of your cities. We have 10 boards and commissions in Anaheim. We're actually going through a huge appointments process next week. I've been reaching to residents across the city saying, hey, if you're interested, now's the time. Please submit your application. It's actually so small, and you can even attach your resume. It's just the easiest thing in the world to do. But I started as a commissioner for our public utility, and I then went on to the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors. And before that, I was, you know, a mom and volunteering in my school. I actually still do. I carve out Friday mornings to be a room mom still. I want my son to look back and have me in his childhood, not just be running around doing a million different things. So you know, I still serve on these Metropolitan Water District Board, actually as a council member as well. I'm still the city representative to that board. So you have no idea what direction it will take you. So it's just so often, like I started with, it's just a leap of faith. But have that leap of faith in yourself first and get involved, because there's so many people willing to help you and to help you be successful in it, and to be there with you along the way. And I've had great mentors in my life. Lucy Dunn is one of them. I think she's had to go on to 15 other meetings today. You know, there's just tremendous people who are going to stay with you, stick by you, and so many new friends and mentors you're going to meet along the way. So hope you'll get involved. And if you have any questions, I've got my card here too. If you want to get involved at the local level, I'm always happy to be a resource to you. My personal cell phone is on my card, so call anytime, email anytime. As all of you know, because I know you're all here because you're already busy women, you know, we're responding, the moms especially, at 10 o'clock at night to half those emails. But we will get back to you. I will get back to you, and hope you'll get involved. Hope you take advantage of the expertise that was in the room today and reach out and put your name on one of those applications. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. There's someone else who we have to thank for making this happen. That's Alicia from the Orange County Business Council. She really contacted us about coming out here, and we worked with her to make this happen. Do you want to say a few words? She's an appointee as well of the governor.
Well, actually not the governor, but the speaker. But either way, you can apply through the governor's office, the speaker, or the Senate Pro Tem as well. But I currently serve on the Board of Accountancy. It was an eye-opener. And it was one of the things that Mona mentioned. I had a friend of mine who said, you do so many amazing things, you need to apply for a board or commission appointment. So I did through the speaker's office. I was given a choice of about 6 boards. 3 of them were education related, which is what I do already. So I said, I think I'll choose these other 3 boards that I had no idea anything about. And I did that for a purpose. I wanted to learn something new. So I got appointed to the Board of Accountancy, which I was at first kind of like, okay, this is a board full of nerds, but you know what? It has been fascinating. As someone who is part of the Department of Consumer Affairs or serves for the Department of Consumer Affairs, my job is to ensure that you are all protected by accountants in the state of California. And we have 96,000 accountants in the state of California. Who knew? And so I've learned all about peer review and sunset review and program enforcement. And, it's insane. But I learn something new every day. And as women, just on a side note, we have always been told to be nice and to, kind of play by the rules. Not on this board. So I got into my first fight a couple weeks ago when we had our meeting, but in a good way. But you have to go out there and you have to make a stand. And you have to ask those tough questions. And the best advice I got was from another public member who said, the best thing, because she was always saying, well, why aren't you asking questions? And I said, well, I'm trying to learn. And she said, here's the deal. Don't let the CPAs on this board, bully you around. Your job is to ask why. That is your job as a public member. Ask why. Why is it this way? Why can't it be this way? We should be doing it this way. That is your job. And, so I ask dumb questions all the time going, why are we doing this? This is completely ridiculous. We should do it a different way. But that's our job. And you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be willing to serve and willing to ask why. And I appreciate all of you being here today. This has been Rachel and Mona. It's been such a pleasure to meet you. And I am, not going to lie, I am a huge fan of Fiona Ma, so, And quite frankly, I am a huge fan of these 2 ladies, Sharon Quirk-Silva and Chris Murray. Chris I used to work with at OCBC, who are the toughest broads I've ever seen. Toughest women I've ever seen. You guys are great. And we need more women like that in office. We need you in office, and we need you serving. So thank you so much, and thank you to California Women Lead for hosting this today, and thank you for Chris for letting us have this wonderful facility. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So any last questions? Anything? Are you all going to go home and apply? Yes? Because the biggest rule about getting appointed is you can't get appointed if you don't apply. But I do want to ask that if you are not a member of California Women Lead, I hope that you'll consider joining. We're actually going to be back here in Orange County in the fall, probably in September. They're called Women's Empowerment Days, and I know the Assemblywoman attended our reception in Sacramento. We always do one at the Capitol, and then we do 2, one in Northern, one in Southern. So this year we're hosting one here in Orange County, and then the other one is going to be in Oakland. And so it's a wonderful day of personal, professional, and political development. We talk about presentation skills, we talk about public speaking, we talk about developing your personal brand. We have an empowered women's panel, just really for you to be empowered, take some time out to how you can be a community leader, whether it's an elected office, appointed office, or just as being civically engaged. So if you're interested in helping us, some of you picked up our brochure about our statewide advisory council. If you're interested in serving on that, Those women and men help advise the State Board of Directors in their local community on how we can be more engaged. So if you're interested in participating, please shoot me an email. Happy to send you an application. You get to work with the 18 incredible women on the State Board of Directors. And then also, if you're interested at all in participating with us on planning our Women's Empowerment Day here in Orange County, just shoot me an email, because we're looking for women here to help us in terms of speakers and topics and those types of things, because we really do want to help empower women to be leaders. So with that, again, thank you. Thank you again to our sponsors.
Also, just real quick, hey, I wanted to point out our electeds in the room. We have Councilwoman Leslie Daigle, and we have Liz Parker. So stand up, and if I miss anyone.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you for coming. San Clemente, thank you. Thank you for coming. So again, thank you for joining us. If you do still need to finish up your registration, you can do so at the door. Again, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all at a California Women Lead event soon.